to the Inspirational Leaders series for V-Class for Leading Minds. You've had a very interesting career, Claire, and a very wide one, very disparate one, before your current role as CEO of Emirates Foundation. But first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about you and about you as a person. So what did you want to be when you were a child? What did you want to grow up to be?
Well, it's interesting you say I've had a very disparate career, because people often look and think I've jumped around a lot. But when I go back to what I always wanted to do when I was a little girl, there is some commonality. And that was, and it is very much a cliche, but I really wanted to save the world. I was very interested in causes from a very young age, be it Save the Bee, Save the Whale, got very active in both charitable work and organizations like the World Wildlife Fund, from a very anti-vivisection organizations from a very young age. So it was that, on the one hand, change the world, and I also wanted to travel the world, and hence my my interest in languages, and very much those two factors until today have still influenced my entire career.
Interesting. So you've actually chosen a very interesting and unusual topic for these discussions that I have with leaders, and you've chosen the paradigm shift that's happening in philanthropy. What does that actually mean?
Well, that for me, again, has been something I've been fascinated for years about, is how can we deploy philanthropic capital in a better way? So that if we talk about changing the world, we really do just that, and we don't waste resources and waste money. And often traditional philanthropy found that there was a lot of good intentions, but a lot of money that was scattered across a too diluted framework without enough real impact, without really changing people's lives for the long term. It's one thing to change people's lives for a couple of years and to have some immediate impact, but it's different when you can create long-term systemic change for societies, and when you can impact the lives of not just thousands of people, but millions of people. That's what venture philanthropy aims to do.
How does it do that? Because you've worked on that in that area for a long time. How does that happen? How does that work?
So there's some very specific different principles between traditional philanthropy and venture philanthropy. So venture philanthropy is very much about long term. From the outset, you have a long-term horizon. You're looking to change people's lives in a sustainable manner. Traditional philanthropy, you'd often have a time frame. So you'd often say, for example, we have a project that we're going to run for 1 or 2 years to try and address issue X. 1 or 2 years when you're looking at developmental issues or socioeconomic issues is often not nearly enough. Venture philanthropy says we'll keep going at this until we've created a permanent solution to the problem. So that's the first core principle, from short term to long term. The second one is venture philanthropy takes a market-based approach. What does that mean? Look at what people actually need. Often in traditional philanthropy, you saw well-meaning projects throwing out good ideas, but not really trying to understand the beneficiary. Venture philanthropy says do market research, understand what your potential beneficiaries actually want, not what you think they need. And the final thing, I guess, really is about deploying the principles of business efficiency, being entrepreneurial, looking at really creating economies of scale and impact at scale. Traditional philanthropy might have been less focused on measurement. Venture philanthropy really says, are we having an impact? What's the value we're creating, and are we creating that value at scale? Is it truly cost efficient? And that's when you get sustainable impact.
How do you build that sustainability there?
That's about mindset. So again, the difference between traditional philanthropy and venture philanthropy is really about this mindset of saying that we want to be entrepreneurial. We want to have an innovative way and a very hands-on way of creating solutions. In the past, often philanthropy was a bit around check writing. Collate some money, distribute it into the ether, and pray that some good is going to come of it. Venture philanthropy is very much about owning the idea, owning the solutions, owning the innovation, deploying that in a very hands-on way and following up. Is this working or not? So it's not about giving out a check to an organization to go and address a particular social organization, and then you come back in 1 year and say, can you show me your monitoring and evaluation? It's about creating solutions in a hands-on way and following up on a day-to-day basis, really like venture capitalists would do with their investments, and hence the name.
Can you give an example of something that you're really proud of and that demonstrates what you mean, and so that we can sort of get a picture of what it's
Absolutely.
like?
So at Emirates Foundation, one of the programs we have is for financial literacy. So again, we looked at the market and we said, what is a problem that young people are facing? And we discovered that many young people leave school or university without a basic understanding of finance, which then means they can come unstuck in their personal finance, maybe becoming overly indebted, getting the wrong investment products, really not understanding how to deal with the financial sector. And when you have that problem, and it's a global issue, it often means that later on in life, you haven't maximized your personal prosperity. You're struggling to pay off your bills, you're struggling to pay off debt, you're struggling to understand what investment is really all about. So we said, wouldn't it be great if you had a nationwide program here in the UAE where every single young person has that knowledge and education when they leave school, that they can not only know how to deal with banks, they know how to borrow, they know how to invest, they know how to manage within their means. It's a very powerful skill set. Now, traditional approach to doing that might have been to set up a small awareness campaign and to run that throughout the course of a couple of years. What we did at Emirates Foundation, we said, let's look at the market. Who else is working in this space? Let's engage the ecosystem. So we work with the banks, we work with the central banks, we work with the electronic payment companies. We work, of course, with schools, we work with universities, we've developed peer mentors. We look at the regulatory framework. We look at how our banks engaging with their customers. We're now helping banks to give financial education to their customers directly. We have outreach through a mobile workshop. So we're looking at all aspects of the challenge, not just taking one simple parameter, but really looking at the ecosystem as a whole. Say, how can we make sure that every young person, when they leave the educational system, has sufficient knowledge and capabilities to deal with finance and manage their own personal financial affairs effectively?
I mean, what stops? I mean, is it the knowledge that they don't have? I mean, what stops CEOs and companies from actually embedding philanthropy in terms of their BAU?
Mindset. So historically, when issues around CSR first started to evolve, they were seen very much as a bolt-on construct to the organization. Your organization is doing commercial operations, and it has to do also something to engage the community. That's what you outsource, perhaps to your communications team, and becomes a bolt-on construct to the organization. What is happening now for companies that are doing this well is really embedded sustainability. So it's built in. So instead of saying there is this community engagement thing that we need to do at some point, they're saying, how does our business as a whole impact society? How does it impact the environment? How does it impact people? How does it impact our employees? Let's look, first of all, who are our stakeholders beyond just our customers? And then let's look at how we impact externally, negative externalities. And then you start to build a sustainability portfolio that really maximizes the value of your business and minimizes the negative impact that it has on the community. And that's something that we're seeing now in the Middle East. It's happening globally, but that's when you really embed it in your DNA. Someone
said something to you. This is something I just wanted to ask about your ability with languages. And, you're a Western lady working in, the Arab world, and at an extremely senior level in an Arab organisation. I'm just wondering, what was that challenge that someone...
Well, I was once challenged. I mean, I've always loved languages, but I had, when I first became familiar with the Middle East and I first started to meet Arab students actually at university, they all said to me, you're English, you will never be able to master the Arabic language. And that immediately, of course, for me was a challenge that I wanted to prove them wrong. And here I am several years later, and indeed Arabic does take a very long time to master, but I have been able to develop a level of expertise in the language which has been very powerful, and now I do go back to those old friends and taunt them a little bit about that.
What's important to young and budding leaders who are watching you now here today talking, particularly young leaders, female leaders in the Middle East?
Well, I think there's a huge opportunity for young women in the Middle East, in the professional sector, in the professional world. I think, particularly here in the UAE, we're seeing a huge amount of encouragement for young women getting into senior roles. We know that research proves that young Arab women just need one example of a mentor, of a role model, and that encourages them to become active in the public sphere and to chase a career. And I think so for young women, it's about having a mentor, about having a role model, because we have plenty in UAE and beyond in the region, and being committed to technical delivery. I think that we have very capable young women, and when they demonstrate that they can deliver as well as their male counterparts, if not better, then I think some of the gender taboos and issues fall away.
A quote for you. I know you've got one that you're going to share with us as well. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. And I wonder how that resonated with you and your career and your life.
Well, I'm an Aquarian. I'm always the kind of person, if you tell me it can't be done, then I want to prove you wrong. And I think, so one should follow one's instinct, one's intrinsic sense of excitement and mission in life. I've always been very cause-driven and really known what are the areas that interest me and have created professional opportunities to work in that space. So I would encourage young people to really think about what does excite you, because clearly nobody wants to be working in an area where they find it dull, but make sure that you also have a tangible technical skill set that you can create value in that space. And if you do those two things, I think you can prosper.
So I wonder if you've got a quote that something that someone has said to you, or a quote that resonates with you in the context of you being here today talking with us.
Well, something that I'm very interested in now on the back of philanthropy and venture philanthropy, which we can also call enterprise-driven, is enterprise. How do we help young people become more entrepreneurial? Because we know that young people are now being told there are no jobs for life, you have to create your own job. So a lot of young people asking, how do we become entrepreneurial? That's hugely important. And I think there's a distinction between innovation and enterprise. Lots of people have good ideas, but there's an excellent book written by Jim Clifton, CEO of Gallup, called The Coming Jobs War, and it's really talking about how young people can access job opportunities. And there's one thing that he says, so innovation, in other words, good ideas, it's a wonderful thing, but it's meaningless without enterprise. So how are you going to translate those ideas into a business opportunity that can create real momentum and real change?
Thank you very much, Claire. It's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.